If we could have people come and take a seat here, we'll go ahead and get started. All right, thank you very much for being here this evening. We really appreciate your interest in these exciting code amendments, and they are exciting because they are working toward some of the community goals that mean a lot for what the future of Park City will be like, including opportunities for affordable housing, incentivizing more affordable units here within the community, and also ways to help provide different modes of transportation through project reviews to reduce the reliance on single occupancy vehicles, on cars, and allowing for more improvements to transit, to bike and pedestrian connectivity. This is a process that was started last year. The Planning Commission reviews the goals of the general plan and prioritizes code amendments that they would like to focus on. And two of those were the affordable housing and these reductions to the impact of cars. And so we have been very fortunate to have a really incredible consultant team guide us and the community through this process. So I'm Rebecca Ward, the planning director. This evening, Jason Glidden is not feeling well. He's unable to join us. We have Julia Collins, the transportation planning manager. Hannah Pack with transportation planning. And then our consultant team, Lisa Wise is joining us from California, Jen Murillo, Ethan Stan, all in from California. We have Jamin Kimmel from Oregon with Cascadia Partners, and then Ivana with Fair and Piers from the Denver, Colorado office. So we'll turn the time over for their presentation and then invite you to stay, share your ideas, ask your questions, and again, we really appreciate that you're here.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for that warm welcome. My name is Jen Murillo. I am a director with Lisa Wise Consulting, LWC, and I am the project manager for the consultant team on this project, and we're really thrilled to be here tonight. The presentation will probably just be about 20 minutes or so. We'll try to keep it brief, and then we'll lead you out into the open house. So as Rebecca mentioned, this project is preparing amendments to the city's land management code. And these amendments are being driven by the city's goals that have been adopted and established in a variety of policy documents. This includes the Park City Vision, the general plan, the affordable or moderate income housing plan, and Park City Forward, and the Transportation Demand Management Report. These key documents are directing the city to take bold action in making amendments to the city's code to be able to incentivize and create more opportunities for affordable housing in the city, and to reduce that reliance and use of single occupancy vehicles, and to modify parking standards to support these goals. So this project is really focused on making some significant strides to achieving and working toward those goals. This project kicked off with some initial outreach that began in the fall. Based on what we heard during that initial outreach effort, our team put together an analysis report, a barriers and best practices report that identified what are the key constraints in the city's land management code to achieving these goals for affordable housing and transportation. And in that report, we identified what those barriers are, and we also looked at what are best practices that are being implemented in similar communities to be able to successfully address or alleviate those barriers. We discussed that draft report with the Planning Commission, and there was a community survey to provide feedback. And based on what we heard from that, we're now at the stage that we've prepared recommended amendments to the city's land management code, and that is what we're talking about tonight. The outreach we conducted included focus group discussions and interviews with housing developers that have experience in the area. We also held internal advisory group meetings, a community workshop. Hopefully some of you participated in that. It was an option for both in-person and virtual participation, so we heard some great feedback at that workshop. That planning commission work session we held and that online survey all gave us input to get us where we are today. As a quick high-level summary for what some of the barriers in the land management code are, and the best practices we identified to work toward alleviating those barriers, this looks at a very high level of some of the items that were identified. But some of the barriers identified included the discretionary review process, namely that Planning Commission is reviewing and approving all of the housing projects, and that opens up some uncertainty for whether projects get approved and interpretations of whether the standards in the code are being met or not, and that creates extended timeframes and costs associated with getting projects approved. There are specific standards that were identified as barriers that included density and lot size standards that really favor the production of larger, more expensive units in the city. Also standards related to building height and open space that aren't aligned with the production of affordable housing or even supporting transit goals and ridership goals. Parking ratios were also identified as a constraint, meaning that the parking required for certain projects or uses are higher than the demand, and that those requirements also don't support housing affordability or transit use. So some ways that these barriers are addressed and best practices that we looked at recommending that could be implemented are revising the standards in the city's code to be objective. So they don't require interpretation or discretion on the reviewer to be able to determine whether or not they've been met. Modifying standards, specifically for open space, building height, and parking, in a way that incentivizes and encourages affordable housing. Requiring strategies for new development that reduces the demand for required parking, and then adjusting the parking requirements, right-sizing those parking ratios so you aren't requiring excessive space for cars, and then provide opportunities for alternative strategies for projects to be able to meet their parking needs. So based on that report, we are now at the stage where we have recommended amendments, and that's what we want to talk to you and get your feedback on tonight. And there are 5 topics I'm going to speak to. They are accessory apartments, pedestrian access and design, transportation demand management, parking, and affordable housing incentives. So first, for accessory apartments, these are units that are attached, detached, or maybe even internal to a single-family home. And these are allowed in Park City, but looking at ways that these types of housing units can be encouraged and facilitated, we have specific recommendations for amendments. That includes removing the minimum lot size that's required today to be allowed to build an accessory apartment, and also to allow accessory apartments to be the same height as the single-family home on the lot on which they would be proposed on. So with that adjustment to allowing taller ADUs, we've proposed standards related to privacy for accessory apartment that has a second story, that any window on that second story would be at a higher height off the floor, or would have frosted or textured glass to allow for privacy if that unit is located within 15 feet of a property line. Also, new setback requirements are proposed. Currently, accessory apartments are limited to 18 feet, only have setbacks of 5 feet. So if we're talking about taller accessory apartments, looking at setbacks that would be generally 10 feet from the rear or side yard, so you have that appropriate adjustment to accommodate taller accessory apartments. In terms of pedestrian access and design, here we're looking at recommendations that identify standards for pedestrian and bicycle connectivity within a site, ensuring that those connections are provided and that there are appropriate standards for that. For instance, distinguishing walkways when they're going through a parking lot or across a driveway. A maximum block length standard is proposed. This is to ensure that there is convenience for the pedestrian to access their destination, and that could be access ways of a full street. It could be a mid-block type of pedestrian connection. Thinking of the stairs that you have between Park Avenue and Main, something like that. It's not a street, but provides that pedestrian connectivity. And then providing those objective standards for building entrances and building frontages that create an environment that is attractive, welcoming to a pedestrian. And an example of that is this standard up here of a porch frontage where you have minimum and maximum dimensions for what the front of a building, how the front of a building can be treated to be welcoming, to provide weather protection, and encourage folks to walk. Transportation Demand Management, or TDM, this covers options or strategies that reduce vehicle trips and reduce congestion without building more roads. So here we have a recommendation to require a TDM plan for new projects that have 10 or more units and most new commercial projects. Now this aligns with the city's thresholds of what projects require traffic impact studies. So with that requirement of a traffic impact study, generally in that case, you would also have to have a TDM plan for your project. And different levels of TDM plans are proposed. For smaller projects, you have a level 1 TDM plan, which has fewer requirements. Larger projects, a level 2 TDM plan that would have all the requirements in the level 1 plan and then some additional ones. But then also offering for projects that want to go above and beyond. They want to include additional measures that reduce their demand for vehicle usage. If they provide 3 additional strategies that go above and beyond, they can have the opportunity to reduce their required parking by 15%, subject to Planning Commission approval. Next, moving into parking. Now, parking was identified as one of the most substantial barriers to affordable housing in Park City. So we're looking at ways that we can strategically address parking needs in a way that is appropriate for the city and successful in meeting the city's goals in supporting sustainable forms of transportation. So in this case, looking at right-sizing parking requirements for certain uses where appropriate, and then offering these alternative parking strategies so that projects have flexibility to be able to meet their need for parking in different ways. So this could be through providing off-site parking, shared parking, underground parking, proximity to transit, all these alternative strategies being considered as ways to reduce the number of on-site spaces that must be provided. And with these strategies, being able to provide the opportunity to reduce on-site parking in magnitudes of, as low as 5% reductions to up to 25% reductions. But in no case would combining these different parking strategies reduce the on-site parking for non-residential uses below 50% or for non-residential uses below 15%. So keeping a cap on the reduction. Now lastly, getting into affordable housing incentives. So the city currently does offer incentives for affordable housing projects. That is through the city's Affordable Master Plan Development, AMPD process. And what that allows today is if a project provides half of its units as affordable to households earning less than 80% of the area median income, they are able to access the incentives through the AMPD process. Now, what we're proposing and recommending is that the city provide some different tiers for accessing incentives for affordable housing. What this would do is provide more flexibility and more opportunities for projects to be able to be eligible or granted incentives. The goal here is to increase the overall housing in Park City that is affordable and attainable. So this looks at lowering, whereas now 50%, half of a project's units must be affordable. This looks as offering options that are down to a quarter, 25% of the units being affordable, but looking at those being a deeper level of affordability, down to 60% of the area median income. And then also looking at going up to over half, 55% at the top end, opportunities if you want to provide more than half, you get additional incentives. So it's providing a range in terms of affordability and a range in terms of the set aside for below market rate units. So the structure behind this is that more incentives would be granted to developments that provide more lower income units. And incentives, just like they are today, the incentives that are offered today are building height, related to building height, related to parking, and related to open space. So maintaining those as the same incentives still. But a note that that special consideration be given to the general commercial district, the GC district. That's the area that includes Bonanza Park. We've heard that there's opportunities there for that area being more appropriate for additional height. So looking at offering additional height for AMPD, affordable housing projects, within that zone. So it's important to, sorry, one second, just get a sip of water. I live at sea level elevation stuff, I'm like out of breath. So one important thing to consider in terms of really incentivizing affordable units is density is a really critical path to doing that. And in this case, density is offered through the building envelope that can be provided through these incentives. In other words, when you allow for additional height, when you reduce the amount of land that must be dedicated to parking or must be dedicated to open space, you create a larger building envelope that can be developed, meaning more units can be provided. What that helps to do is the additional units can help to subsidize more affordable units or deeper affordability of units. So it's really this trade-off of where we look at providing additional building capacity to allow for additional units that can help to subsidize more affordable units, because if that additional building envelope and density isn't provided, the loss in value or revenue from providing affordable units has to come from somewhere. So is it coming from city subsidy, or is it coming from other financial assistance? So that's what you have to consider, and that's what we're looking at providing as incentives that can help to really subsidize and bring in those affordable units. So what that means is this is showing the different incentives across the proposed tiers, with that first column being what's allowed today under the existing AMPD process. So we're looking at allowing maximum building height that can, again, vary. We have a range because we're proposing a range of different tiers that to access affordable incentives, but looking at heights that could go up to 55 feet if you're providing the largest set aside, over 50% of your units as affordable, but allowing up to 65 feet in that general commercial zone where Bonanza Park is. Parking spaces, also looking at reducing the parking spaces in an appropriate stepped level, whereas today the range is 0 spaces to 2 spaces per unit, looking at the largest reduction in the highest tier, tier 4, going down to 0 spaces to 1.5 spaces per unit. Similarly with open space, right now the open space requirement is 20% for affordable projects. In this case, it would reduce down to below 10% at the lowest tier and 15% at the next lowest. But again, this is a range. This is providing a range so that we can open up more opportunities and flexibility for different projects to access the incentives. And we did work with city staff in terms of looking at the financial performance of these tiers and the package of incentives, and found that these were appropriate and these were reasonable given the market conditions in Park City. So with that, the next steps for this project is we do have a Planning Commission work session tomorrow at 5:30. That is in person. You can also watch it via Zoom. And we will be reporting out on the results we hear from all of you tonight. But we will also be getting direction from the Planning Commission on how to move forward with these amendments in terms of bringing them back for public hearings for adoption. So those hearings for adoption haven't been scheduled yet, but that will happen after the work session tomorrow. So we will take a moment, a pause. Alex is going to come up here to speak about another, a plug here for another very important project in Park City. Yep, hello.
Hello. Oh, there we go. So hi, Alex Roy with the Transportation Planning Department. So thanks for coming tonight. You kind of get a 2-for-1 open house here. In addition to the Land Management Code update, we are working on updating our trails and bike and pedestrian master plan. So that's looking at paved paths and on-street facilities for biking within the city. So right now where we're at the process, we have a draft network that we're sharing with the community, looking for feedback on that. Eventually over the summer we'll be refining that based on the feedback and then adopting that plan over the summer. So we're really looking at how do we incentivize biking and walking within the community. A little different than what's been presented here is these are actual, we can go out and physically build it, and so we're kind of prioritizing that within, but they're kind of interconnected, so we were happy to do this project together because we know biking and walking, it's not one system, it's a multi-tiered system of both housing and destination. So thanks for joining tonight, and then I'll turn it back over. And we're in the corner, so yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Alex. Okay, so now we're going to open it up for the open house portion of tonight. And so the way this will work is that we have a number of boards set up in the back, and the idea is for you to be able to peruse those, look at the information. Please ask questions to the folks that Rebecca introduced. You'll see us around. We'll have folks at all the individual boards, so if you have any questions, please reach out. We will have an online survey. I'll put the QR code up just on the next slide so you can take that. We also have some comment cards. If anyone's interested in filling out a comment card, feel free to do so. At the end of the survey, there is if you have anything else to add, please do so. So you don't need to fill out a comment card, but if you choose, if that sounds good to you, please do that. And then if there are any kids here or any adults who feel like kids here and want to draw about housing in Park City, we've got lovely crayons and a little sheet for you to do that. So here is the QR code. Please feel free to scan it. It's also on the board in the hallway. If you can't get it, there is also, if you type in menti.com and enter this code, you can access that as well. Ethan Stan, our LWC lead associate here, if you have any trouble accessing it, please reach out to him. Is it open, Ethan? It's open. It is open. So if you have any trouble, let us know. If you answer any questions and want to go back, you can do that. And please feel free to walk around, gather more information or ask questions as you're filling out the survey. And there's also, as Alex was talking about the bike and pedestrian plan, there's also a survey available for that, and that is the QR code in the corner too. So thank you. We don't have any questions in this style. We just want to talk to you as we walk around the room. So we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.